If Yuji Itadori were in the world of the boys, would he be powerful enough to fight the various Supes there? We'll be using current Yuji, and the TV show version of the Seven as of Season 4. To raise the stakes, we'll use previous Seven members as well, even the ones who aren't full-on antagonists. Only the ones whose powers we've seen though, and people who could actually make a difference. Each party involved is bloodlusted, and the fight takes place in the middle of Shinjuku. This will have spoilers for both series by the way, up to chapter 263 of JJK, and up to Season 4 of The Boys, which as of recording just ended. Let's start by covering Yuji's stats. We'll begin with speed. We won't be highballing this video like I usually do because it's already unfair. Normally, the person I focus on in the video gets highballed because they're usually facing some sort of challenge, and that way we could see if they could do anything at all. But we don't really need to do that here. We're going to use conservative estimates for Yuji. Personally, I like to upscale him to Hikari, who is lightning speed, and that puts him at massively hypersonic by default. Hikari is faster than lightning, and so is Sukuna, both keeping up with Kashimo. Not only has Yuji been keeping up with Sukuna, but he should be relative to Yuta's speed, and given the comparisons between Yuta and Hikari, Hikari's speed feats help upscale Yuta, which in turn upscales Yuji. Even if we want to absolutely lowball Yuji to an insane extent, like a really insane lowball, current Yuji isn't anywhere below hypersonic. Regardless of where you place Yuji's speed, he has a massive speed advantage here. This is for combat speed by the way, not traversal speed. Although for what it's worth, for traversal speed, Yuji could actually run at superhuman speeds before he even controlled cursed energy. Usually I wouldn't cover traversal speed because it doesn't really matter much in these battles, but for speedsters like A-Train and Homelander, I feel like this is important in this specific video. As for Yuji's current travel speed, we don't know how fast he can go, but we have a pretty impressive feat from Yuta and Todo in this arc. Yuta and Todo traveled from Lake Gosho to Shinjuku in a few minutes, a distance of around 550 kilometers, depending on where in the colony he started and ended. There is the possibility that Wee teleported them there in the first place, but that's for the first leg of the trip. Nothing implies that Wee teleported them back there, especially since he was preoccupied with evacuating everybody on the battlefield. And when Yuta makes his entrance, it looks like he got there on his own rather than being teleported in. Todo using Boogie Woogie with projectiles could be a factor for traveling, although that would have just made the process more cumbersome since he would have had to repeatedly do this. That would mean on the low end, Yuta and Todo travel to 550 kilometers in 10 minutes one way. I'm using the 10 minutes as an estimate, we don't know the actual time. Which means they'd have to travel at speeds of over 3,300 kilometers per hour, over Mach 2.6. But assuming they did the round trip with no teleportation, and that the time was 10 minutes total, that's 6,600 kilometers per hour, which is over Mach 5.3. Yuta is likely faster than the rest of the group, but Todo did travel with him too, because we did learn that Todo was there with Yuta during the Kenjaku fight. I personally think Yuji's speed does scale to Yuta, but even if you want to argue it doesn't, it definitely scales to Todo. So if this feat applies to him, it applies to Yuji too. Now for attack power and durability. Yuji's been pretty comfortably at multi-city block level for a while. He was able to fight with Hanami, who was stated by Gege to be physically stronger than Jogo, and you saw what Jogo did in his fight against Sukuna. He was destroying city blocks left and right, and especially in the anime version, he was really impressive. But even just based off manga feats and his meteor, he scales here, which upscales Hanami, which upscales Yuji. And Yuji's fight with Hanami was a while ago. He's of course grown stronger physically since then, and on top of that he gets stronger when performing black flashes. He can't do this willingly, but he does it way more than an average sorcerer can, and when he's in the zone, he can easily chain them. First off, when you're in the zone hitting black flashes, this draws out 120% of your power, but on top of that, the black flash itself has a damage boost in the power of 2.5. This is an exponent, not a multiplier, which is way greater. Although Gege himself did say that he kind of screwed up on the math with this, since 1 to the power of 2.5 is still 1, but the point being, it is an exponential boost. I've also seen people use this page to say that Gege didn't intend for the black flash to be that powerful, but he did. This page is him realizing that if someone starts with a cursed energy of 1, which isn't even defined in the series, then that exponent doesn't work. So the exponents were intentional, he just didn't realize what the base would be. Anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying Yuji is cracked. We have no idea how to quantify his cursed energy in numerical form, kinda like Gege said in that one page, but just know his power can be multiplied significantly when in the zone with black flashes. As for his abilities, even in a battle that doesn't involve Jujutsu, Yuji has a ton of useful things here. Cleave and Dismantle, for example, albeit weak, will allow for powerful attacks at range and up close. We've actually seen him use both Cleave and Dismantle by now. There's also Divergent Fist, and of course Black Flash for stronger attacks like I said, although that's not on command. Yuji also has great healing. He has Reverse Curse Technique, and he has Blood Stitching to reattach limbs if anything's separated. Blood Manipulation also helps his healing, but he could use that for attacks as well. He could presumably poison people with it just as the other death paintings could, but even though it is likely, and I think this is the case, it hasn't been confirmed as of recording, so we'll just ignore the poisoning part for the sake of the 7. Trust me, Yuji's not really going to need it anyways. And finally, Yuji could perceive the soul and attack it. Not just with physical attacks, but Cleave and Dismantle as well. He actually did target Sukuna's soul with a Dismantle, and for what it's worth, Yuji could also apply Binding Vows to himself because he did it in this battle too. Hit a black flash on that like button, by the way. It lets me know you want to see more videos like this. Now on to the 7, although it's not really going to be the 7 since there's more people here. We won't go into most of these characters in depth since a lot of the powers overlap, so unless they've shown otherwise, we're going to use these baselines. Supes are consistently shown to be much stronger than normal humans, but not always to a huge degree. Mostly they range around wall level, maybe small building level at some points. Speed-wise, most are simply superhuman. Like, let's start with the Deep for example, because most of his regular abilities are useless here, and he would just rely on the fact that he's actually stronger than the average human. So he's fighting at superhuman speeds, he has superhuman durability, as well as attack power. Most of his feats put him around wall level, and it's worth noting he has a weak spot with his gills. Next is A-Train. He's obviously a speedster who could just run really fast. Obviously he's left the 7 by now, but we're including everybody historically. A-Train actually does have a speed shown on screen at one point, which is 371 meters per second, but this is while he's in a race and also doped up. So this should reasonably be his peak, especially since he's boosted by this point. This is around 830 miles per hour, barely above the speed of sound. For Black Noir, the original one, he's a ninja who's also somewhat powerful and slightly stronger than the previous two. He's basically just a good close-range fighter with enhanced senses as well. As for the new Black Noir, he's less tactical, but as a Supe, he still is powerful, and he could fly. In his most recent fight, which I think is actually his only fight so far, he took point-blank shotgun fire and minigun fire and survived. Although he was clearly injured and couldn't walk normally after. Plus, the latter actually sent him flying out of a building. He wasn't pierced by the bullets, but the concussive power was enough to injure him. Next, Firecracker. She seems to scale to around Kimiko's level, so small building attack power and superhuman speed estimates, like I mentioned before, they apply to her. As of now, we haven't really seen what she's capable of besides physical power. Her power to make sparks doesn't seem to do much, and she even implied this as well. Sister Stage would be here too, and physically she's just a regular human. She has regeneration for her brain, but just her brain. She's the smartest person in the world, so in terms of combat, she won't directly be helpful outside of taking on a leadership role. But even with the lack of physical power, this could actually be helpful here. Especially after what just happened in the Season 4 finale, she staged a coup of the entire US government, basically just to see if she could do it. So besides being the smartest person in the world, weirdly enough, she's kind of similar to Kenjaku in the sense that they just do shit for fun. Like, she even says herself, she just wanted to do this to see if she could. Not really relevant, just a funny comparison I noticed. Lamplighter's here too. Physically, he's portrayed as not too powerful, but his fire manipulation is pretty strong. He could burn down houses and melt metal doors as well as cook people alive. So his fire seemingly burns really hot, but it doesn't really have a lot of range. Plus, he can't just create fire on his own, he usually uses a lighter or he needs to use another source of fire. But now we get onto some stronger Supes, the ones who actually might do something here. Starlight's an interesting case because her power depends on the energy she absorbs. Normally she's around wall to small building level like other regular Supes, but that could significantly increase with absorbed power. The strongest feat she's shown is holding off Soldier Boy, but she didn't really injure him much and this required a lot of charging. Soldier Boy, for comparison, can easily destroy multiple buildings at a time and was briefly able to match Homelander in a fight. I would think City Block level is a good estimate for him, and we'll get to Homelander in a moment, but Soldier Boy actually scales to some of Homelander's feats. He was stated to be close to Homelander in strength, but Homelander was stronger and overpowered him. So her strongest attack right now is probably large building level, considering it didn't really do too much to Soldier Boy. Maybe City Block level if you scale Soldier Boy higher. But this is just based on what we know now because seemingly it looks like Starlight got a little stronger after Season 4. She got her powers back in the finale, and the last scene of her is her flying away. Actually surprisingly fast too. So it seems like she definitely has a better control after not being able to use her powers the whole season. So it would be a little hard to scale her right now because we don't know the full extent of her power, but this is just based on what we've seen already. As for Stormfront, physically she's around small building level and can be pushed to large building level if we really want to push her. She has flight and can use Plasma Blast, and thanks to those Plasma Blasts, she seems relatively fast compared to other Supes, although it is a bit tough to scale. Maeve is one of the stronger Supes as of her last appearance, and she can be scaled below Soldier Boy's level. Her most notable abilities are her combat skills and her physical strength. We'll assume the higher estimate and make her City Block level, and we could assume her combat speed is relative to Homelander, who she did keep up with. And the last time we saw her was supposedly her at her strongest because in the past she broke every bone in her arm just from catching a bus, which would make her less impressive, so we're going with the high balls. Trust me, they're gonna need the high balls. I'm not being unfair to Yuji, I'm just trying to be as fair to them as possible. Now on to Homelander. Homelander is obviously the strongest within the 7 as of now, and pretty much within the verse, so a lot of focus will be on him. Homelander said before he could wipe New York City off the map for fun. And in one of the official books about the show's production, this was reiterated, and stated that it would take a few minutes. On the high end, this would obviously make him city level, but that would imply he has attacks that could actually destroy the entire city. More likely, this means he could just fly around the city really quick, destroying individual buildings with his strength and lasers, and that's it. I also found one other feat that I didn't consider before, thanks to KLOL506 for this calculation. In the animated Diabolical series, Homelander survives a chemical plant exploding, which is around City Block level. So, using the statement of him destroying NYC, him being City Block level does make sense, at least in terms of durability. Instead of one City level attack, he could probably accomplish this with multiple quick City Block level attacks. So he scales from City Block level to multi-City Block level. It might sound like I'm splitting hairs here, But destroying a city with a single attack is different from destroying a city with a bunch of different multi-city block level attacks. With that logic, that would mean any city block level person technically could be city level with enough time. So that's why I'm not outright saying Homelander is city level here. He is also the fastest in terms of raw speed. A-Train is obviously the dedicated speedster of the group, but Homelander has better speed feats, and unlike A-Train, he can fly. He's able to outpace explosions, which gives him hypersonic reaction speeds. And in terms of travel speed, he's at least supersonic, given how fast he's been shown to fly around at various points. He's also faster than fighter jets, and had a recorded speed of 1,852 kilometers per hour at one point in the show. Yes, he's reacted to lasers before, but no, that doesn't make him light speed. You'd first have to prove that those eye lasers actually move at light speed. His lasers, or others in the show, aren't shown or stated to act like legitimate light or move at light speed, so we can't necessarily say that. That's a big misconception people usually have with lasers, so I just want to get ahead of that before anyone says he's light speed. He's not. Now onto the fight itself, and you could probably see why I included everyone else by now. They're not doing shit. If we absolutely highball everyone here, the only four that could do anything are Homelander, Maeve, Stormfront, and Starlight, with the latter needing to charge electricity to do so. We're doing the fight in the middle of a city, so she can't gather that, but it does take time to charge. First off, Yuji absolutely blitzes all of the others. Like, what the f is the Deep gonna do against him in a city setting? If A-Train's lucky, he survives a bit longer from dodging, but in terms of combat speed, he's still cooked. Once Yuji decides to focus on him, his speed's not gonna really do much. And even with travel speed, he's still cooked because if that feat from before is accurate, Yuji could actually run faster than A-Train, by a good margin too. The low end of Yuji's travel speed is over double A-Train's top speed while he's doped up. Yuji would catch him and everybody else. This includes Homelander too. Homelander could fly, so maybe he could use that to stay away from Yuji for a bit and attack from a distance with heat vision. But Yuji's faster than him too, not just in combat speed, but travel too. You know that one picture of Darkseid grabbing Superman's cape? It'll be like that when Homelander tries to escape. Plus, Yuji could jump really far and high. Not to mention, he has range attacks too. But let's assume the best case scenario for the Supes. Sister Sage would of course know how to strategize, but the thing is, she would know nothing about Yuji. She's the smartest person in the world, but she doesn't have infinite knowledge about everyone right off the bat. She would likely have to see what Yuji could do first before knowing what he's capable of, and this assumes the others are going to follow her plans accordingly. Maeve and Stormfront hold Yuji off, Starlight charges, and Homelander attacks him from a distance. First off, Yuji could dodge all of their attacks. Maeve doesn't even have any range, but Stormfront does have some. Although, if he is hit by her blast, they won't be harming him much. Lamplighter might actually be able to do something to Yuji because he can't tolerate really high heat it seems, but that all depends on Lamplighter's limit for how hot his fire can get, as well as his longest range that he has. If the city is just destroyed as is and there's a lot of fire around, that might be good for him, especially with his fire being hot enough to melt through a steel door pretty much instantly. So his flames might actually be pretty powerful. Issue is, they're probably not going to be fast enough or have enough range to get Yuji. And if he gets close, Yuji can get out of the way quickly enough, or just hit him with that strong cleave. Maybe they could try and restrain Yuji while someone else attacks him with their power. But that's not going to work either. If anyone gets close to Yuji, that's the worst case scenario for them. They're better off fighting at a range because Yuji excels at close quarters combat here. His physical attacks are devastating, and he could slash you really easily up close. And at a distance, he has blood manipulation, so he could use Convergence or Supernova. Even Dismantle might work here too. Granted, those attacks don't seem to travel too fast, so maybe they could be dodged, and that's why they'd have to fight at a range to have a better chance. Even his weaker slashes are going to cut through everyone besides maybe more durable Supes like Homelander, Maeve, and Stormfront. Deep, both Black Noirs, Sage, and Firecracker get taken down really quickly. Lamplighter likely does too, and at best he'll just singe Yuji's clothes. A-Train wouldn't be able to do anything, but might live longer solely because Yuji is fighting all these people at once, and A-Train can at least dodge for a bit. Once Yuji has less targets, A-Train is cooked. Starlight has good attack power when she's charged, but her durability is debatable. She does seem to be pretty durable, but her attack power doesn't upscale her durability. In a city like this, she could likely charge up a lot of power, but that's assuming she has the time and clearance to do it, because if Yuji's anywhere nearby, he's not just going to sit around and let her charge. As for Maeve and Stormfront, they pose the same risk to Yuji, but his much greater speed and power is going to help him easily. Homelander could live a bit with long-range attacks, and his heat vision probably would be harmful due to the heat from it, but Yuji just has to outlast him. If Yuji ever gets close to Homelander, he's done. Homelander is the challenger here, not Yuji, and that's only if Yuji's blood manipulation attacks don't hit. His blood attacks are already supersonic, so besides A-Train and Homelander, this is too fast for anyone to dodge. But with Supernova, it wouldn't even need to be that accurate. And I did say we're not going to consider the fact that Yuji might have poison here, but it's worth noting that Homelander might actually resist that, because he stated to not get drunk or sick. But that's a big maybe. Either way though, any of Yuji's attacks are going to be too much for people. And even if he didn't have his curse techniques here, his raw strength would definitely be enough to do the job. Some of the Supes have regen, with some being faster than others, but none are comparable to the level of Yuji's reverse curse technique. His is much faster and more readily available, and that's even if he needs to heal himself. And on top of that, Yuji could target the soul as well, completely bypassing durability. Not just with punches either, he could target the soul individually with Shrine, as he did in chapter 263. Even with all those people highballed against a lowballed Yuji, it's still unfair. If we use mid-ball estimates for everyone, it gets even more lopsided. Even if we threw Soldier Boy in, it'll help a bit, but it's still going to be a clear win in Yuji's favor. Or even if we used Yuji before he unlocked Shrine and Blood Manipulation, like I said, even without curse techniques, he's still going to be fine here. And small note about that Blood Manipulation too, even if we included Newman or Marie, Yuji's blood control could directly counter their blood powers too, so besides the fact that their blood control seems to have a limit, like Newman couldn't do that to Homelander, like Yuji's the perfect counter to that. And they're not even a part of this. But that's pretty much it. Let me know what you think below. I'm sure most of you are going to be on Yuji's side here anyways, but be civil in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe and hit that bell if you did, because it'll let you know when I upload again. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video. By the way, this entire video was recorded before it was revealed Yuji has a domain. As of the time of recording this section, we still don't know what it does yet, but I mean, come on. Even without a domain expansion, this is really easy for him. It's pretty unfair as is, so imagine what it's going to be like when you throw the domain in there too. In short, they're cooked.